Alright guys, so the next GUDAGUDA event, or I guess if you want to use its proper name, Yamataikoku, and I hope I am pronouncing that correctly, is here on the NA version, and so obviously I'm going to go ahead and drop a guide for you guys to help you out. And let me just say, as somebody that played this event 2 years ago on the original run over on the JP side of things, this is a pretty good event. It functionally has what I would consider to be kind of a mini lottery system in the tea crafting system, which we'll talk about when we get over there. But it also just feels nice because you can use the free-to-play to complete the 90++ for this event without anything super crazy. I mean, as long as you farm them up, level up their skills, and you have a way to properly support them, you're going to be able to get through this event pretty easy with like no huss, no fuss. And that's kind of the theme with a lot of the events that we're going to be getting, kind of starting with the summer event that we just had leading into this one, and then going into the Huyan event. They all have these little additional gimmicks that just make them so much easier to get through, and you get so much more rewards that I wish they would kind of go back to these events that have these little gimmicks, because they're really fun and they offer you just extra rewards for kind of doing what you were already doing. So I'm going to break this event down as someone that's already done it 2 years ago. And if you find that to be helpful, a like on the video and maybe even a subscription to the channel would be greatly appreciated, as it helps me out more than you know. But with that being said, let's just jump right into this event guide, starting off with the servants you're going to be using, the event bonus servants, because it's highly recommended that you always use the servants on here if you do have them. It'll just make your life a lot easier. Getting anywhere from 30 to 100% bonus damage for just bringing a servant you own will just make getting through the story that much easier, and it gives you an easier time getting through the farming nodes, those being the free quests. Now, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, if you have Yugioh, you're going to want to go ahead and level her up and start using her. She's very, very strong. She is an arts AoE servant, so if you don't have Castoria, you can always use something like a friend Castoria plus a Jufu, a Nero Bride if you have her. Paracelsus and Asclepius are also really good at giving her NP gain or arts buffs and batteries, just depending on which one of the two that you're using. But obviously, it's going to be a little bit before we have access to Yugioh. We kind of have to play through the event and wait for some of the nodes to open, so give that about a week before you're able to fully max her out. If you do pull for Senno Rikyu, you could pretty much use her everywhere in this event, and she will absolutely clap it up. Being a berserker that is an AoE quick servant, she can pretty much hard carry you through the entirety of this event. But also, don't overlook someone like Okita Alter. If you have people like Koyenskaya and Oberon, Okita Alter will be a pretty decent farmer going into this event. Being an alter ego that you can use against any cavalry class servant gives her a lot of very good diversity. Unfortunately, if you run into a node that does have a knight class servant, you kind of have to sub her out for somebody else, which could also just be her swimsuit version, who is an AoE quick servant, who is not getting that 50% bonus damage, but the 30% is still rather strong. And then as far as single targets are concerned, I'm seeing people like Kagetora, I'm seeing Izumo, the original Okita, Saito. These are just very good single target servants that you can use for either farming or for any of the boss fights that are going to be in the event. So just make sure you're referring back to this list to just give yourself that much more of an edge going through the event. Other things though that will give you an edge going through the event are going to be some of the free goodies we get. Starting off with the 5-star command code, we have Consort of the Sun, which is a bit of an interesting one because usually they throw these burn effects on the lower rarity command codes, but this is a 3-turn burn that also gives you 15% crit damage. So you could throw this on a servant like, say, Yang, that can take advantage of that burn because they have a power mod on burned enemies, and you can use this to more easily trigger, more so than it already is, to trigger the burn on the enemies, just to guarantee they're always burned, because you do want that power mod to always be alive. Or you could just treat it as a crit damage command code and just slap it on any one of your crit servants, which pretty much can be any DPS you want. So generally very good that you could throw on some specialty servants if you really feel like it. Similarly, the 4-star command code Eternity Mirror can kind of just go on whatever servant you want. Ideally, it's going to be one of your DPS servants because it gives you immunity against ceiling debuffs for 2 turns and it lasts 1 time. Those ceiling debuffs being things like, you can't use your buster cards, you can't use your NP, you can't use your skills, which predominantly you're going to be seeing the skill seal and the NP seal the most. And so putting it on a servant that you're just going to be bringing to challenge quests can always just be rather nice. You could also throw this on your supports if you are worried about, say, getting your skill sealed at a very inopportune time and then not being able to use, say, like Castoria's first skill to allow your DPS to fire their NP, and then maybe you lose the fight because you got sealed. It's just a nice thing you can chuck on one of your servants to give him that little bit of an edge whenever you're in one of those harder fights. You can also just save it because we have those command code remover things, and you can just slap it on one of your guys whenever you're going into a fight where you know this is going to be very prevalent, so use that accordingly. And then finally, There is the goofy little 3-star command code that we're going to be getting, the Ochanobu, which when you put it on one of your quick cards will remove one of the latest debuffs that are on your servant. Or should I at least say ailment debuffs, because that's stuff like poison, burn, curse, stuff along those lines. So if you're going into a fight where you know there's a lot of damage over time, you can kind of just slap that on there to give yourself just that much more of an edge. It also does increase your max HP by 1000 for one turn when attacking using the engraved quick cards, so that can be very nice if you just kind of want to like balance out the damage over time you've been taking. Kind of functions as a little bit of a heal, I suppose, but it's probably not one you're going to be putting on one of your main DPSs. You'll probably just hold on to it until you are going into a challenge quest that has a lot of damage over time debuffs. And then there's also going to be a free-to-play CE that we're going to be getting called Welcoming a Journey, which isn't the best CE on the planet, but hey, at least for going through the event, it's kind of okay, especially if you are going to be using, say, a Buster Servant or a Quick Servant, because they are going to be getting 10% Quick and Buster performance, as well as 8% NP gain, while also starting with 50% NP charge whenever you have it max limit broken. However, if you're a bit of a newer player and you're wondering, hey, is this a CE worth like fully max leveling to level 100? I wouldn't recommend doing that, as this event does give you EXP cards for your CE specifically. They come in 3 and 4-star rarities, but this CE is not one of those really strong ones that you usually can kind of get from an event. It's kind of more of the middle of the road ones. It's not one of those hidden gems or anything, so just max limit break it, use it for the event, and then you'll probably never use it again unless your account is newer and you can rely on something like this. But this kind of segues into how you're going to get a lot of these extra copies, because they do come in the point ladder, and the point ladder is accessed by doing the tea recipes, which basically when you go into any of the farming nodes, you'll get these different tea powders, I suppose. And then depending on what combination you use, you'll get different rewards. So it's kind of like a lottery box, except you get to pick whatever you want to go try and get. And there are some very strong rewards in there. If you're someone like me that's always finding themselves in need of QP, some of them have that. You've got things like seeds, chains, spinal fluid, dragon fangs, phoenix feathers, night metals. I mean, even if you need hearts of the foreign god, they've even got that in there. So it's really nice, again, because it's this side little mechanic that's built into the event that also just allows you to get whatever resources you need. So it's more targeted at it, instead of being just like, well, this doesn't really have anything that I need. You can go specifically for what you want. And again, the benefit is you don't have to do anything different than what you would normally do going through this event. They just drop from the stages normally. I mean, obviously, different powders drop on different stages, so if you want to go after a specific tea brew to kind of get a specific material, you do need to be mindful of what stage you're farming for what tea powders you're going to be getting. But because, you know, it's a time-gated event, you're going to be farming like whatever the stage of the day is until you can get enough points to move on to the next stage and, you know, wait for the time gate to disappear. You're going to farm just a bunch of different powders anyway. And again, sure, you might complain that, oh man, I got to like think about 2 different mats that I'm going to be going after. I got to think about where the tea powders are and the bronze, silver, and gold mats. Realistically, you should just think of it as like, oh, okay, I'm farming for my bronze, silver, and gold mats, and then I'm getting additional rewards in the background, because most of the boxes are really good. Even if there's one that you specifically want, the other little tea powder combination recipe things are also just very, very strong in general. And again, very hard to complain when the final node that drops just a little bit of everything, the 90++, is not only just 2 waves with a 190k assassin as the first battle and then a 1 million HP in the second battle, but this is farmable using the free-to-play servant EO. And again, I've said this time and time again when people ask me about this. I did this on JP with just double Castoria and using the EO you get from farming the event. I leveled up her skills and pretty much called it a day there. Now, not having Oberon, sometimes there is a bit of card RNG that is needed, but being able to do this for free with 1 support is kind of insane. And so I highly encourage that you take advantage of this 90++ node. I mean, it even drops the Trom bronze item that I know a lot of people need an excessive amount of, especially because it's kind of still fairly new over here on the NA side of things. So the drop rate from the mat is really good. It drops everything you want from the shop. It drops all the tea powders, and you can do it using the free-to-play servant. There's almost no reason to go farm any of the other stages. Because, I mean, I would argue the 90+ is more annoying to do over the 90++, because 90++ you can do that for absolutely free using the free-to-play servant, whereas the 90+ is a 1, 2, 3 node, which in my opinion is one of the more annoying ways that they can kind of comprise these farming nodes. So you could do the more annoying one for whatever reason. I don't know why you would do that, or you could do the 90++, which is better in every single way, and you could just use the free-to-play EO to get it done. Speaking of which, if you're wondering if EO is good, yes, she is very, very, very strong as a free-to-play servant. I mean, you could just use her as your AoE arts looper. You could just kind of just straight up use her for all of those stages. She's just very, very strong. In fact, I used her as my main looper for the longest time over on JP and would sub her out with my NP1 Ibuki because NP5 for free is very strong, and she does have the Divine Power mod, which is a pretty decent chunk of servants and random free quest enemies. And so if you failed going for Summer Ibuki, or you don't have Space Ishtar, you don't have Summer Kama, you don't have any of that stuff, then Io is completely fine to use as your main AoE looper. And I just still think it's crazy how good this event was overall. Not only do you have a mini lotto, but you have a really good 90++ that drops a map that people really need, and it's doable with the free-to-play servant because they're just so good. I mean, the only lacking things are that, it's not a straight-up lottery, and maybe the free-to-play CE could be a bit better. Maybe the command codes are a little bit more on the wonky side. But these are all things that are still usable, right? At least the free-to-play CE is good for the event because it helps out your Buster and Quick Servants, especially even giving them a little bit of NP gain. So if you don't have Senno Rikyu, you could just use one of your other Quick Servants. And I guess speaking of Senno Rikyu, I already put up my video on her the other day, but I guess talking about the banner that's coming out, it is a little bit unfortunate that she's as good as she is because her banner is not super great. I mean, Kisuke over there is okay. He's kind of fine as a support type servant that if you want to use Shinsengumi guys with him, you get a little bit of added benefit because they get the big crit damage, but there's not really a reason to use him, right? FGO's in this very weird position where the top supports are just so good that no matter how you build these other kind of like small pseudo supports, you're probably not gonna crack them out. I mean, it takes somebody like, say, Zhu Fu to get that consideration of maybe bringing because they do the healing, but even then, unfortunately, Zhu Fu comes out and then Lady Avalon comes out, right? That might just be, kind of the arts problem of that they just have way too many supports, so it's kind of hard to pick between them. But I think Kisuke probably could have benefited from being maybe like a lower rarity quick support. You know how we have just a dearth of these art support servants that are not Castoria. I mean, you got Tamamo, Zhu Fu. Technically, you could use Nero Bride in some of those looping compositions. You've got Asclepius. You've got Proto-Merlin. You just have so many people. I mean, even for Buster, at the very least, you have Koyenskaya, then you have Merlin, but then you could kind of consider somebody like Chen Gong a pseudo Buster support. It's just kind of unfortunate that Quick doesn't really have that because, Wu, I think, is like the best you get as a pseudo Buster support, whereas funny enough, the adult Wu, the caster one that we just got, is a better pseudo Buster support than the original one is as a pseudo Quick support. So I think he could have benefited from that. Plus, wouldn't it kind of just make sense to drop a sub Quick support on the banner with the Quick AoE looping servant? I thought that would have made sense, but the banner is worth rolling on if you do want to get a very strong Quick AoE servant who is pretty good at farming, but even better at kind of just dismantling guys in challenge quests. I mean, that third skill is kind of a house. But that's about it. That's pretty much everything for the event that you need to know. I hope you're looking forward to getting in there and getting all those goodie mats. I know that I'm excited to not only get some mats, but also a little bit of extra QP on the side. That'll be very much appreciated for me as I still have a bunch of servants that I need to get leveled up. But if you found this video to be helpful, I would appreciate a like on it and maybe even a subscription to the channel, as again, helps me out more than you know. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice one, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Peace.